What if the person you trusted most in the world wasn't who they said they were? Imagine being married for 20 years, sharing your life, your dreams, your bed, only to discover that the person lying next to you every night wasn't the person you thought they were. Marcus Johnson had always believed that he and his wife Angela were inseparable. They met in high school, their bond strong from the very beginning. They built a family, a home, and a life together in the quiet suburbs of Prince George's County, Maryland. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, admired by friends and family for their unwavering commitment to each other. But what Marcus never knew was that Angela had been hiding something from him all these years. A secret so deep, so unbelievable, that its discovery would change everything. For 20 years, Marcus lived in what he believed was a marriage based on truth. But Angela, carrying the weight of a past she'd carefully concealed, feared the day when her secret would be revealed. She had lived with this fear for as long as she could remember, knowing that one wrong move would shatter the life they had built. One evening, while going through some old boxes in the attic, Marcus stumbled upon something that would crack the foundation of their entire marriage. It wasn't a letter or a journal. It was a series of photographs from Angela's youth. But these weren't the photos of the woman he knew. The person in the picture was someone entirely different. Confusion crept in. Who was this person? Why had Angela never spoken about this part of her past? As Marcus pieced together the photographs, the letters, the evidence, the questions began to grow. He was desperate for answers. Every moment, every word, every look from Angela began to feel like a clue. And soon, it became clear. This wasn't just a misunderstanding or a forgotten detail. The truth was darker than anything he could have imagined. How would you feel if the person you trusted most wasn't who they said they were? How would you handle it? Could you ever trust again? Stick around, because this story is far from over. But before we continue, let us know in the comments. Do you think trust can ever truly be regained once it's broken? If you're intrigued by this shocking tale, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more chilling true crime stories. Prince George's County, Maryland, is known for its vibrant, close-knit communities. The county, with its large black population, is one of the most historically rich areas in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Families here often find themselves rooted in generations of history, surrounded by the familiarity of their neighbors and the comfort of suburban life. It's a place where people come together for block parties, where the kids play in the streets until the street lights come on, and where everyone knows each other's business. The Johnson family was no exception. They lived in a quiet neighborhood, where the streets were lined with well-kept homes, green lawns, and children riding their bikes in the evenings. Marcus and Angela had built their life here, a life that seemed as perfect as any. Their home was warm and inviting, with laughter echoing from the kitchen during family dinners, and Sunday mornings spent together at church. Marcus Johnson was a dedicated man, a hard-working individual who took pride in providing for his family. He worked as an accountant for a local firm, spending long hours at the office, but always making time for his wife and 2 children. Marcus wasn't the type to worry about the small stuff. His friends described him as easygoing, trusting, and perhaps a little naive at times. But he loved his family with all his heart, and that love seemed enough to carry them through the challenges that came with raising a family. Angela, on the other hand, was more private, a woman of few words. She and Marcus had met in high school, and from the moment they laid eyes on each other, it was as though everything else faded away. Angela was beautiful, smart, and caring, qualities that drew Marcus in, but also qualities that made her an enigma. She rarely talked about her past. It wasn't that she was secretive in the traditional sense. She simply didn't feel the need to share. Marcus never thought twice about it. After all, she was his wife, the woman he had loved for 2 decades, the mother of his children. What need was there to dig deeper into the past? Despite the love they shared, there were moments, fleeting, almost imperceptible, where something fell off. Angela's quiet nature sometimes bordered on aloofness. There were nights when she seemed lost in thought, staring out the window for long stretches of time, her eyes distant as if she were searching for something in the faraway horizon. Marcus, though, would always dismiss it. He attributed it to the stresses of life, raising a family, maintaining their home, and everything else that comes with being an adult. But now, looking back, Marcus couldn't help but wonder. Did he ever sense that something was hidden? Something that Angela was keeping from him all these years? As time passed, small, seemingly insignificant details began to surface. A strange look in Angela's eyes when she thought Marcus wasn't looking. An old photograph that Angela had tucked away in a drawer. A picture of a younger version of her that Marcus had never seen before. He hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now, in the midst of his search for answers, those small moments began to replay in his mind, each one a piece of a puzzle he didn't know how to solve. Could he have known sooner? Did he ignore the signs, too wrapped up in the life they built to see the cracks forming beneath the surface? Now, with everything he's discovered, Marcus can't help but wonder, how could he have been so blind to the truth? How could Angela, his wife, the woman he loved, have been living a life so different from the one he thought they shared? Imagine for a moment that the person you've trusted for 20 years isn't who you thought they were. What would be your first thought? Would you be able to move past such a revelation, or would it consume you? Let us know what you think in the comments. As time went on, the weight of the mystery slowly grew. At first, Marcus couldn't put his finger on it. It was a feeling, a nagging suspicion that refused to go away. Everything appeared perfect on the outside, yet deep inside, something didn't sit right. Angela had always been the quieter one in their relationship, but lately, she'd been even more withdrawn. She would go days without speaking much at all, and when she did, her words seemed distant, almost rehearsed. Marcus noticed this, but brushed it off, thinking it was just the stress of life weighing on her. After all, they had a family to raise, bills to pay, and the normal stresses of adult life. But then, small things began to slip through the cracks. One evening, while Marcus was looking for a family photograph to put in a frame, he came across a set of old letters Angela had apparently hidden away. They weren't from any friend or relative Marcus had ever heard of. The return address on the envelope was from a distant city. Marcus opened one, hoping it was just an old letter from a family member. What he read, though, would be the first sign that his wife's past wasn't what he had been led to believe. The letter was written in a hurried hand, filled with apologies. There were no details, no names, just a general apology for past actions, followed by a request for a meeting. It was clear Angela had been in contact with someone from her past, someone Marcus had never known about. Suddenly, the pieces started to fall into place. He remembered the night she had been acting strange, the way she avoided certain conversations, the way she would quickly change the subject whenever her past came up. One night, as Marcus was cleaning the attic, trying to organize the mess that had built up over the years, he stumbled upon something that would expose everything. It was a faded photograph tucked in a shoebox, hidden beneath some old clothes. Angela had looked so different. Her face was softer, more youthful, and there was a different kind of smile on her lips. It wasn't just a photo that caught Marcus's attention. It was what he saw next to it. A small, folded piece of paper. As he opened it, his hands trembling, he saw it. The name. The one name he'd never heard before. The name of a man. A name that had no place in the life he had built with Angela. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the name. His heart began to race. He wasn't sure what to do with this information, or how to even process it. The woman he loved, his wife of 20 years, was hiding something huge. Something that, once revealed, would alter everything he knew about her. He didn't know it yet, but the answers were buried right under his nose, and soon, the truth would be revealed. But the questions flooded in. How long had Angela been hiding this from him? Why? And who was the man whose name had now become a ghost in his mind? Would you have suspected anything sooner? At what point should Marcus have figured it out? But would the truth be revealed in time, or would it come at a far greater cost? After the discovery in the attic, everything changed. Marcus knew now that the woman he had loved for 20 years had been hiding a secret far deeper than he could have ever imagined. The revelation was undeniable. Angela was not who she appeared to be. The name on that paper, the photograph that he couldn't stop staring at, they all pointed to the same shocking truth. Angela, his wife, was not a woman at all. She had been living a lie for 2 decades. The person Marcus had married, shared his life with, the mother of his children, was actually a man named Andre. The thought was incomprehensible. It felt like the ground beneath him was being pulled away, like he was drowning in a sea of betrayal. His mind raced. How had he missed this? How had he not seen the signs? Every quiet moment, every glance Angela had ever given him that seemed so distant now, replayed in his mind with a new, terrifying context. The confrontation was inevitable. Marcus couldn't live with the lies any longer, and neither could Andre. He was consumed by a burning need for answers, answers that had eluded him for so long. One evening, when the kids were out with relatives, Marcus found himself standing in front of the woman. No, the man he had shared his life with for so long. He stared into Andre's eyes, the person who had once held his heart, and demanded the truth. "Why?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you hide this from me all these years?" Andre's face was expressionless, but there was a flicker of pain in his eyes. He had been caught, but it seemed like the weight of the secret had been too much for him to bear. He didn't speak at first, just stared at Marcus, as though searching for the right words. "I never meant for it to go this far, Marcus. I never wanted to hurt you. I loved you. I still do," Andre finally said, his voice cracking with emotion. But it was too late. The words were hollow, meaningless in the face of the betrayal. The anger, the confusion, the hurt, it all boiled over in Marcus. He had trusted this person with everything. Their family, their future, their love. And now he realized it had all been a lie. His hands trembled as he reached for the gun. It was in the drawer where he had always kept it, hidden, just in case. But this was not a moment of self-defense. This was a moment of pure, overwhelming rage. Marcus pointed the gun at Andre, his mind racing, but his body moving in slow motion. Every part of him screamed to stop, but the need for resolution, for revenge, was too great. The sound of the gunshot echoed through the house. Then another, and another, and another, and another. 5 shots in total. 5 moments of pure emotion, each one louder than the last, each one ringing in Marcus's ears like a death knell. The chaos of the moment was unimaginable. Andre's body hit the floor with a sickening thud, blood pooling around him. The room was silent except for the ringing in Marcus's ears, the staccato of his own heavy breathing. He stood there, frozen, staring at what he had just done. The weight of his action sank in, but there was no going back. Was it fear? Was it rage? Was it betrayal? The emotions that coursed through Marcus in that moment were too complex to understand. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The life he had built, the love he thought he had shared, all came crashing down in a single irreversible act. Was the shooting impulsive, a momentary loss of control? Or did Marcus feel completely justified in what he did? Could anyone blame him for the rage that had taken over? Or was this an act that could never truly be excused, no matter the pain he felt? Imagine being in Marcus's shoes. The shock, the devastation, the betrayal. Would you have been able to control your emotions after such a devastating revelation? Would you have taken the same course of action? Or would you have walked away, seeking answers in another way? Let us know in the comments. Could you have acted differently? The sound of the gunshots had barely faded before the chaos began. Marcus stood in the center of the room, surrounded by the aftermath of his own emotions. His actions irreversible, his future uncertain. The immediate silence was deafening, and the realization of what he had just done began to weigh on him like a 1,000-pound burden. Within moments, Marcus's actions became the center of the community's attention. The peaceful suburban neighborhood of Prince George's County, Maryland, was shaken to its core. Neighbors who had once waved and smiled at Marcus and Angela now stood in shock and disbelief. The police arrived swiftly, their sirens cutting through the night, and Marcus was arrested without resistance, his face blank, his body numb. The media quickly descended upon the case, eager to exploit every detail of the tragedy. News outlets broadcasted every twist and turn of the case, from the shocking revelation about Angela's true identity to the tragic act of violence that followed. The story spread like wildfire. Marcus Johnson, the quiet, trusted man from the neighborhood, had been living a life filled with lies and betrayal. His wife, the woman he had shared everything with, had kept a secret that tore apart their marriage, and in a moment of unthinkable rage, Marcus had taken a life. The questions began immediately. Was Marcus justified in his actions? Or was it a cold-blooded murder, an act of rage that could never be excused? The community was divided. Some felt sympathy for Marcus, understanding that the depths of the betrayal he experienced could push anyone to their breaking point. Others, however, couldn't shake the feeling that this act was one of deliberate violence, one that was fueled by nothing more than unchecked emotion and fear. Marcus was quickly put on trial, and as the courtroom doors closed behind him, the world watched. The prosecution painted a picture of a man who had been overcome by his emotions, a man who had acted impulsively and without thought. They argued that, despite the betrayal, the act of murder could never be justified. The defense, however, focused on Marcus's emotional state, on the deep hurt and confusion that must have consumed him in that moment. They begged the jury to consider the psychological toll of living in a relationship built on such profound deception. Outside the courtroom, the community remained torn. Some believed Marcus had been pushed to his breaking point, that no one could truly understand the agony of living with such a lie for so long. Others felt that no matter the pain, no one had the right to take another's life in cold blood. With the trial still ongoing, the emotional toll began to ripple outward. Marcus's family was left in ruins. His children, now faced with the truth about their mother's identity, struggled to make sense of the horror that had shattered their world. His friends, too, were left questioning their own assumptions about the couple they thought they knew. And as the days dragged on, Marcus sat in a holding cell, the weight of his actions slowly sinking in. He had been betrayed, yes. But had he gone too far? Could he ever atone for what he had done? The emotional fallout was staggering. The community, once filled with trust and familiarity, was left reeling. People began to question everything: their marriages, their relationships, the trust they placed in the people closest to them. And at the center of it all was Marcus, trying to reconcile the man he was with the man he had become. What's worse, the betrayal or the crime? Could anyone truly understand Marcus's decision? Or was this an act of violence that could never be justified, no matter the circumstances? Now, as Marcus sat in a cell, he had no answers. Just endless questions about what could have been. Could this tragedy have been avoided? Was there another way, some other path, that didn't lead to this devastating end? Could he and Angela have resolved their issues without violence, without loss? Imagine yourself in Marcus's shoes for a moment. The heartbreak, the shock, the confusion. Could this have been prevented? Could Angela have come forward sooner? Or would the truth have always come out this way? Could Marcus have found another way to deal with the pain without resorting to violence? Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you believe Marcus's actions were justified? Or was there another way this story could have ended? As we look back on the events that led to that fateful night, it's impossible not to ask ourselves, why did this happen? What was it that drove Angela, no, Andre, to deceive the man she had vowed to love and cherish? What psychological factors led to this massive lie that unraveled a life built on trust and love? At first glance, it may seem like an obvious act of betrayal, a deceit driven by selfishness or manipulation. But the truth isn't always so black and white. Andre, who had lived as Angela for so long, must have been dealing with deep psychological pain. To live a life of secrecy, to hide your true self from the person closest to you, is a burden that can take an emotional toll far beyond what we can imagine. It's easy to assume that Andre had malicious intent, but what if there were other forces at play? Perhaps fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of never being loved for who she truly was. The societal pressures that exist for individuals struggling with their identity are immense. Andre may have felt trapped in a world that wouldn't accept her, and so she created a new identity, a new life, hoping it would protect her from the harsh judgment of society. But the price of that deception was steep. Psychologically speaking, living a double life can have serious consequences. The constant fear of being exposed, of living with a secret that could destroy everything, is mentally exhausting. Andre likely had to suppress her true self for so long, convinced that revealing the truth would lead to rejection and loss. But the longer the truth remained buried, the harder it became to bring it to light. And when that truth finally came out, it had the power to destroy not only the life she had built, but Marcus's as well. Was there manipulation involved? Perhaps, in a way. It's possible that Andre, in her desperation to maintain the life she had built with Marcus, led him to believe a version of reality that suited her needs. But it's important to remember that Andre wasn't the only one living a lie. Marcus, too, had been living with his own version of the truth, a truth that he had built based on trust and love. When that trust was shattered, the consequences were far more catastrophic than anyone could have anticipated. Now, let's turn our attention to Marcus. Did he have any responsibility for what happened? After all, he had been living in this relationship for 2 decades, never questioning the foundation of his marriage. Did his naivety play a role in the tragedy that followed? Or was he simply a victim of circumstances far beyond his control? Societal pressures also played a role in this tragedy. In a world where rigid gender roles and expectations still hold sway, how could Andre have felt safe revealing her true identity? Could Marcus, a man of his time, have understood or accepted her if she had told him the truth from the beginning? Would society have accepted their relationship if they had been honest? Would they have been able to build a life together without fear? Now, we enter the gray area, the moral complexity of this case. Was this a crime of passion, driven by the raw, uncontrollable emotions of betrayal? Or was it a premeditated act, a decision made in cold blood after years of pent-up frustration, confusion, and pain? It's a question that's impossible to answer definitively. Marcus's actions came in a moment of profound emotional collapse. His world was shattered in an instant, and his response, shooting Andre 5 times, was the result of that overwhelming emotion. But was it justified? Or was it a crime of passion, an act that could never be excused, no matter the provocation? Trust, betrayal, and crime. The lines between right and wrong often blur when emotions run high. Can betrayal ever truly justify an act of violence? Let's discuss this. What do you think is worse, the betrayal that Marcus experienced or the crime that followed? Could this situation have had a different outcome? What would have changed the course of events? Would a conversation, a moment of truth, a different decision have spared them both from a violence that ultimately tore their lives apart? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. As the dust settles on this chilling story, we are left with more questions than answers. The case of Marcus Johnson and the deception that shattered his world is just one of many stories filled with twists, secrets, and unimaginable betrayals. But don't think this is the last of such stories. In the coming days, we'll be diving into more haunting true crime cases, stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Next up, we'll be exploring a chilling unsolved mystery that has haunted a small town for decades. A young woman vanished without a trace, and despite extensive searches, no one has ever been able to uncover the truth. Was it foul play, or did she disappear on her own terms? Stay tuned, because we'll be digging deep into the case and examining the theories that might finally crack the mystery. We know that true crime fans like you are always looking for the next gripping case. So let us know in the comments. Have you heard of a chilling case that you want us to cover? Maybe there's an unsolved mystery you've always been fascinated by. We want to hear your thoughts. Your story ideas could be the next one we explore. If you enjoyed this story and you're craving more unsettling true crime content, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got plenty more stories lined up that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Before you go, here's a special treat. The most interesting comment left on this video will be featured in our next video. So don't forget to share your thoughts, theories, and reflections. Who knows? Your comment could be the one we highlight. Until next time, keep your curiosity sharp and your mind open. We'll see you soon.